with all the serious stuff going on in the world right now, we need to talk about an issue on everyone's mind. And that is, what tape deck will get me through this apocalypse?
Welcome back to another awesome video.
Today we're going to look at the toughest of tape decks, the CR1002 Communications Recorder from Signal Design Incorporated. Whether you're the disc jockey in a jet or playing tapes in your tank, this cassette deck has been designed to satisfy the most demanding military audiophiles in the roughest possible conditions.
If this wasn't a plane or tank, do you think if the planes, they have checklists to start up their engines, do you think if you were in a fighter jet they would click this little switch on the front?
You think he might be listening to some Kenny Loggins in the fighter jet, like Highway to the Danger Zone? No, but seriously, it's a communications recorder.
That's pretty interesting.
And we don't really have a lot of information about it. I got this from somebody who bought it as military surplus, so I don't know where it was actually used. But so if you know anything about it, please leave a comment. So do you think this looks like a tape deck?
It doesn't to me until you open it, until you realize the instructions of it.
So it doesn't look like a regular tape deck to you.
It has rubber buttons.
It's got these very rugged backlit keys, and it doesn't have any indicator lights. All the information shows up on this 2-line LCD display up top. You insert the cassette upside down, and then you crank this door locked. It's kind of hard to do. And then once you do that, as you can see on the display, it goes through a tape initialization process, and then you're in stop mode. As you can see the word stop. The row of buttons at the top right is rewind, play, and fast forward. And when you hit play, you notice it says repro at the top, like I guess voice reproduction.
There's also speech mode that I read on the manual.
Yes, there's a lot of interesting features which we'll go over in a minute. The middle row has the stop button sandwiched between two record buttons, and the bottom row has that CH button, which stands for channel. So when you're playing, if you notice, that second line has a VU meter, and you can switch between monitoring channel A and B, which are like left and right channels on a stereo recording. And you can adjust the output volume with these arrows.
Ooh, what does this button do?
Yeah.
Self-destruct! Ah!
Yeah, that's it.
Fire the lasers!
So a basic problem I faced with getting this thing working is, how do I connect it to anything? The connectors in the back are sort of intimidating. Just a bunch of multi-pin proprietary military connectors.
Okay, the amplifiers are placed. How's the jitter?
Actually, it turned out to be surprisingly easy. First of all, the connectors on the left are B and C connectors, which are sort of some standard connectors. So what do I need to do with the connectors on the right? The top two are labeled transfer and remote, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with those. Those are for linking. I think it said you could link up to 80 of these recorders together for redundancy.
80.
Yeah, 80. But anyway, I don't need redundancy. I just need that 10-pin power connector at the bottom. So there is no wiring diagram. There is no information on the internet, but the spec sheet does have a clue, and that is this thing runs on between 12 and 28 volts. So I know I can run this off 12 volts. The second clue is the power connector itself. Of the 10 pins, only 3 are actually connected. And one of those pins I can see is clearly the green ground wire. So that's great news. I can hook the 12 volts negative up to that ground wire. Then I just have to guess which of the 2 remaining pins is the positive 12 volts. As it turned out, supplying 12 volts positive to either of those 2 pins worked to power the unit. So really easy, it turns out. Anyway, so after I turned on my power, I simply pressed that unlabeled switch on the top, which is the main power. It's the power switch. And as you can see, it goes through a short boot up sequence, because essentially it is like a 1980s computer.
It looks like something from Star Wars.
It looks like something from Star Wars. Yeah, it's a little bit later than Star Wars, I think. Which brings up another point. How do we date this thing? That's one of the things I really want to know, is the age of this machine. When was it used? The manual was printed from a Word document that was dated August 16th, 1988.
The Word was around?
Yes.
Wow.
On the inside, there's a ROM chip with a handwritten date of May 8th, 1991. And every time I boot up the device, the internal system clock shows a date and time around 1500 hours on August 23rd, 1998. The internal clock battery is probably dead, so the clock does not maybe keep up the time unless it has power. And like a lot of industrial machinery, there's a usage counter which shows 29 hours of use on the machine and 6 hours on the tape heads. As to how to interpret all these various dates, I assume this model was designed in 1988, this particular machine was assembled and sold in 1991, And as to the 1998 date, I know the machine has some non-volatile memory chips, so 1998 could be the last time it stored a clock value to its internal memory. Every time I boot this system, time does seem to be advancing. That date might represent a time after this was decommissioned but before the clock battery died. So in any case, it's likely been over 20 years since this machine has seen any sort of active duty. I said duty. Sorry. One of the first things I wanted to try out with this unit is a Vox, or voice operated recording, which seems to be its main purpose, recording voice communications automatically. It's a little bit of trial and error. I figured out I could attach a microphone to 2 of the pins and then try out a voice recording. It was not very sensitive at all. I guess it has to really be loud or whatever. But anyway, so I put it in the voice operated mode, and you can see on the screen it says Vox/COR, so that's voice operated or changeover recording mode. I guess changeover is if one cascades to another. And so then we tried to simulate an incoming transmission.
Hello, Goose. This is Maverick. Come in, Goose. Has anyone heard from Goose? I haven't heard anything back. Over. Oh, Goose. This is Maverick. Come in, Goose. I haven't heard from Goose. I haven't back. Over.
Wow, this is not a very impressive demo. It did work, and it worked a lot better. You just sort of speaking firmly and loudly into the microphone directly. I did get better luck hooking up a line input to the rear of the device, but the automatic level control really made it sound funky, I guess because it's optimized for voice. I'll let you hear a sample of it, of a YouTube audio file played on this device, if it was recorded on this device or recorded on a regular cassette deck. So many of these options, like the ALC control and tons of the other options, sensitivity for Vox, all this stuff can be enabled or disabled. However, the irony is I'm going to have to hack this thing in order to do it. And I could sure use some help, because what I have is I have a user manual. There is, I can view the options, but I can't set them without a options setup manual, which doesn't exist. The company Signal Design Inc. was bought by another company and bought by another company, and then their military products were sold off, so there's no information about this thing on the internet. So I do have a code. When I can get into the setup menu, I have this code, but I don't know how to even get to the point to enter the code. So if anybody can think of any ways to hack into this thing, I might do another video in the future. But anyway. And now let's take a look inside the box and see what makes this thing so tough. First of all, you see a lot of things to prevent vibration problems, like tie wraps and heat shrink around a lot of connections. And if you look at the top of that light blue capacitor, you can see like what looks like a green goo. Looks like there's a coating on top of all these chips to prevent them from vibrating loose. Not to mention the case itself, is inside this metal sleeve, and it's got all these really thick metal sides to it. Look at that plate at the back. That's kind of interesting. Why would they put a metal plate over the rear section and leave the front section exposed? Let's take the metal plate off and take a look behind it. And so behind the plate, you got more wires. You've got a little fuse there. You've got some colorful 80s computer cables. You've got some labeled head wires. But the real reason for that plate being there will become apparent when we look at the other side. If you notice those notches at the top, let's look at the other side. And the other side of this deck is a lot more interesting. That's where the cassette mechanism is. It's a very sturdy, solid metal mechanism, as you can see here. The cassette goes in this weird upside-down orientation, and it kind of sticks on the way out a little bit. But anyway, let's look at the capstan motor, and you'll notice something interesting. There's the capstan right there, and if you look behind that, you'll realize it's a direct drive motor. That's right. There are no belts in this thing, presumably for reliability reasons, not audiophile reasons. So the capstan is a direct connection from the motor. And on the right there, you see that second hole. If this was an auto reverse deck, there would be another capstan motor, but this is not. That was an optional upgrade for this thing. So there's just an empty space where the motor would be. And here's another view of the head. You can see it's actually a 3-head deck, and there's a hefty spring on the pinch roller, and the wires on the heads are also locked down to prevent vibration problems. Here's a view of the cassette loading mechanism. It's actually pretty tough to get closed. That little latch, you have to put a fair amount of pressure on it. And when it unloads, the whole thing just causes that mechanism to pop the tape back out. But let's get to the plate on the right side. As you can see, there's some adjustments exposed, but the plate is covering up some stuff just like on the other side. And underneath it, it is what you'd expect to find, some more wires and chips and stuff. And so on this side, you can see some of the things they've done to lock down the chips. Like on that bottom chip, you can kind of see a plastic coating over it almost that's holding it in the socket. And if you look at those boards, the reason for those steel plates is the fact that those are, I guess, cards that slide in and out. And so you could actually pull them out to work on them if you needed to. When I first opened this thing, I found it came with a tape. Now the tapes stick in this machine. They're kind of hard to get out. And the guy I bought this from had never powered it up. So it may have actually been used in the machine. It just had some strange tones on it. And the machine didn't react any way on the display or anything to those tones. So it may have just been like a test tape or something. But anyway, here's a quick audio sample of the tape that came with it. What do you think that was?
I hope he didn't launch a missile.
I don't think so. But anyway, there is not a lot of information about this recorder online. We sort of dove into it in this video. We may do another video. Yeah, so if you've ever seen one of these things and out there in real life or in a
or if you're in the military.
Yeah, and you know what this thing is all about.
Comment.
Yeah, comment.
No.
And it's just obviously a very tough component. We could find some information online about other, ruggedized recorders. But anyway,
there's one that could survive rain.
Yeah.
And then there's one that can survive if the spies put it in water. If someone tries to put it underwater.
Yeah. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you for subscribing and liking this channel.
Thank you for the support. We'll see you next time for another awesome video.
I'm sorry, sir. I must have taped over that.